So, last week, 2 weeks ago, we learned about the second war that Shaul was going to be leading, and altogether, Shaul is going to lead 4 wars, 3 in succession, and consecutively, and 1 at the end of his kingship where he would lose his life. So here we are. We had already the war against Ammon. It was a very short, quick, striking lightning of a success. It started in the morning. By midday, it was done. Smashing success. Everybody applauded him, and everybody accepted him as a king. Some time passed, and now we have a war against the pelishtim. The war starts in Perek Yud Gimel, but it continues in Perek Yud Dalet. We have the war is over 2 prakim, Yud Gimel and Yud Dalet, but it has distinct stages. In Perek Yud Gimel, we have more of the causes and the preparation for the war. In Perek Yud Dalet, it's the actual battle. So what caused the war was that they were garrisons of pelishtim that were around. Is it a word, garrison? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Around Eretz Israel at different spots, and Jonathan went over to one high commissioner of pelishtim, and he wanted to kill him. Thinking to himself, we don't know exactly what he was thinking, but possibly he was saying, we can't live with a status quo of people occupying us without any reason and without any consequences. So I'm just going to go and change the status quo. I'm going to kill a high-ranked official of the pelishtim, and let's see what gets us. So right away, it caused the war. It's as if someone would attack the American president. Obviously, they would have to retaliate with a war. We don't just let big events. More relevant, the Cuba situation, with the missiles. So there was a provocation, and then it had to have a consequence. So here's same thing. So they all gather in Gilgal. I'm giving context because it's really important because that Perek is crucial in the course of the universe, actually. And they gather in Gilgal, and that's where Shaul has his first big test as a king, and he was supposed to wait for Shmuel for 7 days. The entire class of 2 weeks ago was dedicated to that situation, that Shaul had to wait for Shmuel for 7 days, as already was announced to Shaul, and then Shmuel would bring a korban and tell him what to do. But what happened is that he waited for 7 days, and in the middle of the 7th day, Shmuel was still not coming, and Shaul brought the korban himself. As soon as Shaul brings the korban, Shmuel comes and says, hey, what did you do? You brought the korban without me. So there's a lot of parallels with other sins that were done for the lack of waiting, like the golden calf that Bnei Israel said, we're waiting for Moshe for 40 days, no problem, but on the 40th day, don't ask me to wait anymore. So that created a major shift into the course of history, because from now on, Shaul is told that he will not be king anymore. So he will continue acting as a king, but Shmuel announces to him that he will not, the kingship will not continue with him. He will not have a dynasty, or he will not continue being king. It's a very heartbreaking situation, because you think to yourself, what did he do so wrong that the kingship is being taken away from him? He didn't want it in the first place anyways. Why do you have to make it so humiliating for him? Now, it's a whole situation. And the idea is that the king has to be a reflection of the humility in front of Hashem. Whatever Hashem asks, I think that's what we finished the class with last class. Whatever when Hashem gives clear directives, we need to make sure to trust Hashem that the directives that he gives us are the right ones. And we have a complete counterexample of this behavior with David. When David will be king, there is a war against the pelishtim also. It's right after David will conquer Yerushalayim. The pelishtim are going to come attack David. And David will ask in the Urim Vetumim, he's going to say, what should I do? And the Navi tells him, what you should do is you should stand in the forest. He said, should I go attack the pelishtim? Should I fight back? And usually when he would say, should I fight back? Hashem said, just go fight. And this time Hashem said, don't. You stand in the forest. And when you hear, listen well, when you hear footsteps on top of the trees, then you will go attack. Like, it's a really strange sign. And imagine, like, did we ever hear footsteps on a tree, on the top of a tree? So, like, how would we even recognize that sound? If we have a lack in emuna, we can just pretend and imagine. It's like, I think I heard wind on the leaves. That must have been it, you know? But David really waited, and the pelishtim were right behind the corner. And his soldiers are telling him, David, if we go now, we can attack them from behind and we'll win. It's like really an easy win. And David says, no. Hashem said, the Navi told me that I need to wait for the steps on top of the trees. And I'm going to wait. And he waits. And at the last second, he hears those footsteps on top of the trees. And that's when he goes. So we see that David had that strong emunah in Hashem. And that's what granted him the merit to have an eternal dynasty. So with that, we have Shmuel will leave Shaul and the scene of the battle. We're in Pasuk Tetvav, Perek Yud Gimel. So Pasuk 15. Vayakom Shmuel, and Shmuel got up, Vaya'al mina Gilgal, and he went up from Gilgal, Givat Binyamin, to the Givat of Binyamin. So now it's a very dramatic moment because Shmuel is separating from Shaul. It's not just that he's leaving and going somewhere else. He is making an official separation between him and Shaul. In the previous war, Shmuel was with Shaul during the war, and here Shmuel is not staying. So it's more than just leaving. It's a real separation. So what does Shaul do? Vayifkot Shaul et ha'am. Shaul counted the nation, hanimtzaim imo, who were found with him. Keshesh meot ish. There is about 600 men. Now, beforehand, at the beginning of the Perek, we tell us the count of the pelishtim army. They have like 30,000 soldiers and 60,000 horse riders. They have and foot soldiers. They have there is no end, like sand on the seashore. So the pelishtim have a massive army, and what does Shaul have? 600 people. To give context back is because there were people before, but they left because they were waiting for 7 days for Shmuel. People just lost patience, were scared. They left Shaul. That's one of the reasons that pressured him to actually bring the korban. פסוק ט"ז, ושאול ויונתן בנו, והעם הנמצא עמם, and Shaul and Yonatan his son, and the people who were with them, Yoshvim begeva Binyamin, they sit in Geva Binyamin, upelishtim chanu b'michmash, and the pelishtim are camping in Michmash, so opposite of them. Pasuk Yud vayetze hamashchit mimachane pelishtim, and so literally the mashchit is the exterminators. I'll explain. Vayetze hamashchit mimachane pelishtim, the exterminators came out of the camp of the pelishtim. Shlosha rashim, 3 heads. Harosh echad יפנה אל דרך חופרה, אל ארץ שועל, והראש אחד יפנה דרך בית חורון, והראש אחד יפנה דרך הגבול הנשקף על גיא הצבועים המדברה. So what happens here is very interesting. The Pelishtim divide their army into 3 groups, into 3 units, and they send each unit into a different direction in a way to encircle the Bnei Israel so that they can attack them from every front. What is interesting, number one, is that we have someone who used exactly that strategy. And that was Shaul when he did his previous war. When Shaul did his previous war, the pasuk is very explicit. And he says, Shaul divided the army into 3 groups, and they attacked the city from 3 sides. And here, the Pelishtim take his own tactic, and they employ it against him. Number 2, what is the mashchit? The mashchit is as if you would imagine elite unit of the army that are known to be destroying everything they see on their way. So it's not like an army that is fighting with human rights or anything. They go and they just destroy. So it's the most violent part of the army of the Pelishtim that is going and separating into three heads. Why do we make sure to give us all those details? Is to show us Bnei Israel are in serious danger. Naturally speaking, strategically speaking, they're in serious inferiority. There are 600 men. The Pelishtim are immensely superior in numbers, and they are like in their willingness to destroy, they are completely there. And look at, even if we go even further, how much of a disadvantage Bnei Israel are at, pasuk Yutet. V'charash lo yimatzeh bechol Eretz Yisrael. And even a rake you couldn't find in the entire land of Israel. Ki amru pelishtim, because the pelishtim had said, pen ya'asu ha'ivrim cherev ochanit. Lest the Bnei Israel, the Ivrim, the Hebrews, will do with their rakes a sword or how is it called? You know the swords that you throw? It's not a sword.
Spear.
A spear. Thank you. I knew the word. It just eluded me. A sword or a spear. We'll finish and then I'll ask you a question. Pasuk chat, vayerdu kol Israel הפלישתים ללטוש איש את מחרשתו ואת עטו ואת קרדומו ואת מחרשתו. Here we have names of instruments that are used to plow the fields and to work in the fields, and that the Bnei Israel are going to look for either by the pelishtim, by the place that the pelishtim used to guard for them, or in places that they hid them. So Bnei Israel are not going to fight with weapons; they're going to fight with agricultural utensils, tools. Why? Because the pelishtim had forbade them to own any weapons, and even those tools, they forbade them to own them so that they wouldn't use them as weapons. Chaf Alef, והייתה הפצירה פים למחרשתות ולעיתים ולשלוש קלשון ולקרדומים ולהציב הדרבן, all these things that when they were able to get all these things. והיה ביום מלחמת ולא נמצא חרב וחנית ביד כל העם, the entire nation don't have a sword or a spear, אשר את שאול ואת יונתן, the people that are with Shaul and Yonatan, ותמצא לשאול ולא יונתן בנו, but to Shaul and Yonatan, they were able to find a sword. So of the 600 people that were fighting, only Shaul and Yonatan have a sword. ויצא מצב פלישתים אל מעבר מיחמש. Boom, boom, boom. Like you have your heart beating as we finish, like there is like an end, and like you're in suspense. They are going. It's like, that episode that is finishing, and you're like, they're advancing towards us. Like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? I would like to bring your attention to
what does that last pasuk mean?
So the camp of the Pelishtim went out over Michmash. They were camped in Michmash, and now they're leaving their camp to go towards Bnei Israel to attack them. So it's like really the suspense in movement. What is going to happen? We have here at the end, in that last section of the Perek, we have a situation that is very strange. I mean, it must remind you of the story of Hanukkah, that all the soldiers in the Maccabees, they were not real soldiers, and they were just enrolled in a haste to fight for their belief, but they were not actually real soldiers. But in another way, we have here a proximity of terms between weapons and agricultural tools. Did you ever hear them mentioned together?
Well, when Mashiach comes.
Thank you. When Mashiach comes, what will happen?
We'll change weapons into tools to farm.
It's the other way.
The other way.
Swords to pleasure.
Exactly. So it's the other way. Yes. So actually, it's a pasuk in Yeshaya that says when Mashiach will come, is one of the things. He says a lot of things that will happen when Mashiach will come, and he says when Mashiach will come, all the weapons will be, because we'll not need weapons anymore. There will be a world peace. Mm-hmm. We'll use them to plow the fields and to use into growing things. So two things. Number one, here we see there is the opposite that happens. So what happens is that when Mashiach comes, it will be a world of perfection. But here, we just had, with the story of Shaul not waiting for Shmuel, we just had a tremendous imperfection coming into the world. So we are in an opposite state. It's not Mashiach times, it's the opposite of Mashiach times. It's a time that makes our life more difficult, when the time of Mashiach is supposed to make our life more beautiful. So there's that. Number two, it's hard for me to not mention it, but when there was COVID, it was as if it was a war between countries. There were countries attacking other countries in different ways, not in ways that we're used to. And what was very proliferating, at least in America, was giving food boxes. I don't know if you remember, but there was a stage that they were giving boxes, they were distributing boxes just of fruits and vegetables. You remember that? And they're like, in shul, they had to take out the dressing because they were not kosher.
Right.
But the fruits and vegetables were kosher. So I was thinking in my head, look at that. That's really like Mashiach times. That's where instead of
like the bread lines.
like what?
I was thinking more like the bread lines, like in the wartime.
In the wartime, yeah. No, definitely was that. There was definitely that. But there were moments that you're like, oh, 1 second. There are countries attacking each other in a very pacifist way, like very clean hands, let's say, very clean hands. And we're like, how do the Americans respond? Let's give food, let's give produce to the population, So it's like a funny analogy. So here we have a time of darkness, because the sin of Shaul, it sounds like it's just a detail in the story of Shaul that is like in the 3rd book of the Nevi'im, that no one really knows that story, but actually it created a massive change. The Shaul didn't wait for Shmuel, created a massive change. I explained last class that if Shaul hadn't sinned, he would have continued being a king, and he was from Shevet Binyamin, and he was supposed to do all the wars for Bnei Israel. And when time would be ready, David would come and be king, because it was planned that David would be king. David would come and be king and be able to build the Beis HaMikdash. But because David sinned, because Shaul sinned, David had to finish the wars, and then he was not able to build the Beis HaMikdash. And Hashem told him, you can build, well, the Midrashim tell us, in the Navi, it doesn't say this because he made wars, but David was not allowed to build the Beis HaMikdash. So it created a defect in the world that he was not given that opportunity. So it was a massive change, and we see it here in the way that the war happens. We are right away moving on to Perek Dalet. What happens? So what happened is that I'll give you just a little context, and then we'll look into the psukim. Shaul will also divide the army. He will divide the army into 2 parts. He will say, I will take with me 2 battalions, and Jonathan will have with him 1 battalion. With Shaul will have, with his battalion, he was going to have the Kohen Gadol of the time, who is a grandson or great-grandson of Eli, that we encountered in the beginning of the Sefer.
How many years is it since then?
It's quite a few years, because Shmuel is old. So it must be like 40, 50 years. And Eli was old already at the beginning. So if he has a grandson, he must be young, but already an adult. Because Eli was 98 years old. His sons must have been like in their 60s, maybe, when they died. So they had time to have already children, and maybe even grandchildren when they died at war.
Right. And we know if they're good or they were like Eli's sons.
So we'll see. But he is good. They are good because of Shmuel's leadership. Shmuel completely changed the culture of the nation. If you remember, we said that Shmuel was not taking anything from the people, even though if he would go travel to service the people, he would be allowed to take favors from the people, but he didn't. Why? Because he was living in a time that the leadership took advantage of the people, in the time of the sons of Eli. So he went completely the other way. He really made a huge work into fixing that situation, because when the leadership is rotten, then people don't trust the leadership, and it creates anarchy, because you can't respect the hierarchy. So then there's no more authority, and then everybody does whatever they want. So that was a really serious situation that Shmuel really worked hard to fix. So Shaul and Jonathan are separate. They separate from each other. One is here with 1 battalion, and one is here with 2 battalions. Shaul has the Kohen Gadol with him. The Kohen Gadol is with the Urim Vetumim, and they have the Aaron with them. Now, we remember having the Aaron brought at war at the beginning in Perek Dalet, and it didn't turn out good. However, here, the Aaron is brought into number one, there are different opinions, if it's the Aaron that was supposed to be in the Mishkan, or another Aaron that was brought special for the war. And the Aaron was brought together with the Kohen Gadol, not as an object to protect them, but out of respect for the Kohen Gadol, that he comes together with Aaron. And we'll see the difference of behavior between Shaul and Jonathan. Shaul is the king, Jonathan is his son, and there will be a very strong I will not say obvious because you need to pay attention to it, but once you pay attention, you can't unsee it. All right. So let's start the Psukim Perek Yudalet Pasuk Aleph. Vayehi hayom, and it was the day. Vayomer Yonatan ben Shaul, and Yonatan the son of Shaul said, El anar noseh kelav, to the boy who was his weapon carrier. Lecha v'na'abra el matzav pelishtim. Let's go and pass by the campment of the pelishtim, asher me'ever alaz, that is on the other side of here, uleaviv lo yigid, but he didn't tell his father. Where's his father? Pasuk bet. V'Shaul yoshev. Shaul is sitting biketzei hagivah, at the other end of the givah, of the valley, tachat harimon, under a pomegranate tree, asher b'migron, that was in the place called Migron, ve'ha'am asher imo, and the people that were with him, keshesh me'ot ish, they were about 600 people. Ve'achia ben Achituv, and Achia ben Achituv, Achi Ikavod, the brother of Ikavod. If you remember Ikavod was the child that was born when the daughter-in-law of Eli was dying. She died in childbirth on the day that her husband and her father-in-law died. And she heard that her husband died. She heard her father-in-law died, and she heard that Aaron was taken captive. And she was giving birth. She died in childbirth, but before she died, she called her son Ikavod. So the brother of Ikavod is clearly young now. So his older brother is Achia. Ben Pinchas, the son of Pinchas, Ben Eli, Kohen Hashem b'Shilo. He's the Kohen Hashem in Shiloh. That's very, I didn't figure out why it says in Shiloh. Maybe because Eli was the Kohen in Shiloh, but today no one was Kohen in Shiloh. Noseh ephod, he's carrying the ephod. The ephod is the apron that the Kohen is carrying, but it's another word to say that he had the Urim Vetumim, the Choshen Mishpat, with the 12 stones. Ve'a'am lo yada ki alach Yonatan. And the people didn't know that Yonatan left. So here already we have a difference of behavior between Shaul and Yonatan. What is Shaul doing? It's in Pasuk Bet, when we describe Shaul, we say Veshaul Yoshev, and Shaul is sitting, inactive. He's not making any move. On the other hand, Yonatan, he says to his weapon carrier, you know what? It's too boring here. Let's go and let's see what's going on by the pelishtim. So Yonatan is being brave and he's taking initiative. He doesn't know yet what he's going to do, but he says, let's go figure it out. We can't just stay here. And we see that the Kohen Gadol is here, but no one is asking him anything. Right? We know he's here, so there is the possibility of asking the Kohen Gadol in the Urim Vetumim what to do, but no one is asking him. Pasuk Dalet, Uven HaMa'aberot, and they passed. So there was like a canyon, and Yonatan passed in the bottom of the canyon, and the pelishtim were on top of it. If you imagine it, like a canyon is very stiff, but imagine more like a very tall mountain. That Yonatan would pass in the bottom. The pelishtim would be camped at the top, but they can't really see what's going on in the bottom. But Yonatan can guess from action and from like really paying attention what might be happening in the top. Right? So he sees but is not seen. Uven HaMa'aberot, asher bikesh Yonatan la'avor, and in the passage that Yonatan wanted to pass by, al matzat pelishtim, shen hasela, there is like a tooth in the rock. So like I said, like a passage in between, a narrow passage in between high hills. I don't know why we need to know those names, but there is two sides. He's going in between. So one is close to the Pelishti camp, and one is close to where the Bnei Israel are, because the Bnei Israel in Geva and the Pelishtim in Michmash. So he passes by, and then what? Vayomer Yonatan el anar noseh kelav. Yonatan says to his weapon carrier, Lecha, let's go. V'na'abra el matzav ha'arelim ha'ele, and we will pass by the camp of those uncircumcised people, meaning those Pelishtim, that their disadvantage compared to the Bnei Israel is that they don't have a breast. Ulai ya'aseh Hashem lanu. Ulai ya'aseh Hashem lanu. Maybe Hashem will do something for us. כי אין להשם מעצור, because there's nothing that stops Hashem. להושיע ברב או במעט, to save with many or with few. This sentence of Jonathan is the sentence that encapsulates the entire trust that a Jewish leader needs to have. That it doesn't matter how many you are, and la Hashem matzor. Hashem does not have anything that stops him. Jonathan lives with that trust. Shaul, on the other hand, we see that with all his perfection, Shaul doesn't move forward with it. Shaul stays in the back for the moment. And Shaul has tremendous qualities, and he's a gigantic tzaddik. But that energy of saying Hashem can do anything, we'll find it by one other person. So I want you to think, who would be one person that will say, it doesn't matter that my enemy is stronger, I can still attack him. As little as I am, I can still fight an enemy that is much stronger than me. David. Yes, Matthew also. But like in the Navi, we're going to see it like in about 3-4 prakim. So it's like so obvious, the connection. And we'll know that Jonathan and David will be very, very close friends, to the point that when we say, what is a true friendship? Is the friendship of David and Jonathan. And they have the same values. Because they have that trust in Hashem that says, my abilities, they don't really matter. What matters is what Hashem can do for me. Now, it's funny because we're talking about a war, about an enemy. We don't have enemies. We don't have wars, right? But we have our interior battles. What do we do with our interior battles? And we often think like, I'm not capable of doing this. I can't do that. But is it really our abilities that make us successful? Or is it Hashem's decision that makes us successful? If you think about it, because a lot of people have abilities that for some reason you don't see that there's atzlacha, there's no success in what they're doing. And some people, they're not that smart. I have a sister, she tells me, it's so funny, I have a friend, she was never so smart in class. Today she's super successful because it doesn't matter.
Also school smart. Don't mean anything in the world.
No, but she was not, right. No, but it was not like she was someone like a simple, like,
No, but it's true that you don't have to be smart to be successful.
Right? Because sometimes what people need is just like the bracha of Hashem, that Hashem says, you know what? I want you to have this.
Also, like you're saying, like leaning on that trust that Hashem believes in you, right? If we believe in ourselves by just simply believing that Hashem believes in us, we'd be doing a lot more.
Or just handing it to Hashem, like Hashem, you like, I'm making the keli, but you're doing the work.
Right, exactly. So remembering that idea also. Now we are at the end of ER. What's the Hebrew day today? Do we know? Okay. So tomorrow Friday. So Friday is Chafret Iyar. Chafret Iyar is Yom Yerushalayim. What is Yom Yerushalayim? Is when in 1967 the Israelis took back Jerusalem. They were attacked from every direction. The entire world was saying how like Israel is completely doomed. So like, oh, like it was so nice it existed for 20 years, but like goodbye. And the way they succeeded, they didn't say, oh, well, there's no chance. We're just not going to be able to. I'm not saying that they went to war with the ideal of Hashem is going to save us. But Ben Gurion did say that to be a realist in Israel, you have to believe in miracles. So there is still, that. So Yom Yerushalayim in 2 days, that it was the success of a small army against 3 big and powerful armies that went and attacked them. So it's not as ancient as it sounds when we read in the Psakim. So here, Jonathan goes and he says to his weapon carrier, you know what? Let's see what's going on by the pelishtim. Let's see if we have if we stand a chance to attack them. It's true, we're only the 2 of us because we separated from the group. But it doesn't really matter that it's only the 2 of us. Because if Hashem wants us to succeed, we will. And the weapon carrier tells Jonathan, do everything that is in your heart. Sorry. Do everything that is in your heart. Go with it. Everything that you decide, I'm with you. So I read something, and Shayla, I thought of you because it's so befitting that I would say something that represents you so much. Listen to that in your house. No, you'll love it. He tells him, do whatever is in your heart. What does it mean, do whatever is in your heart? He tells him, go whatever your hearts tell you to do. If you feel in your heart that you should do something, do it. I'll support you. What is he telling him? Follow your instinct. If your instinct is telling you do something, do it. So what I read is that the instincts actually is a little bit like a spark of a nevuah. When we have an instinct for something, someone like you have a strong feeling that this is the right thing. It doesn't just happen that you have that feeling. Hashem put it in you because it's a spark of nevuah. It was like, that's something that I think Shayla really believes in. So I loved it that it so happens that it's in your house that we get to share that thought. Because it's something like people say, what do you mean follow your instincts? Maybe your instinct is leading you wrongly. But no, if you have a strong feeling for something, then it's someone put it there. Didn't just happen. So he tells him, whatever is in your heart, do it. Jonathan tells him, okay, let's make a plan. We are passing now, passing right by the people, by the pelishtim. We will be revealed to them. Now they're going to see us. If they tell us this, when the pelishtim will see us, they have two options. Either they can tell us, Domu, stand still, until we come to you. Stop here. We see you're not part of a unit. Stop here. We're going to come check you out. Wait for us to make a decision about what will happen with you. Ve'amadnu, we will stand. Tachtenu, we're under. You remember the pelishtim are up high. We're under. Lo na'alelem, we're not going up to them. We're not going to fight with them. Ve'im koyomku, but if they say as follows, alu elenu, go up to us. Ve'alinu, then we'll go up. Ki netanam Hashem beyadenu, because Hashem will have given them to us. And this is the sign for us.
They're just two people?
Two people, Jonathan and his weapon carrier.
But didn't I hear you say that they divided, like 2 battalions, 1 battalion?
Yeah, so Jonathan left his battalion and he went just with his weapon carrier. He said, I'm leaving the people behind, I'm going to figure things out.
So why does it say that he had 600 people with him, Shaul?
Because automatically all the rest of the people that Jonathan left, they became under the leadership of Shaul without Shaul even knowing. Shaul has no idea that Jonathan left because it says Shaul didn't know. He didn't tell his father, and then it says, and Shaul lo yada. Shaul didn't know what's Jonathan's plan. So Jonathan here makes a plan, and he says, I'm going to make a sign for myself. I'm going to decide according to what will happen. I don't know what is the right decision. I don't know if Hashem is going to help me through that battle or not. I don't know if Hashem wants to save Bnei Israel through me. So how am I going to know? If the pelishtim tell me, stop, we'll come to you, that means they mean business, we're not standing a chance. If they say, go up, we'll check you out, go up and we'll see what we'll do with you, then that means that we win. Now, what happens is that here, Jonathan is making a sign. And he's making like a sign with Hashem, saying, Hashem, if you want me to understand that you're going to make me successful, this will happen, that will happen. Now, in the Torah, there is a very, very strong Isser. It's very forbidden to make signs for things. To say, well, if it rains today, that means I'm not going to get that job offer. If whatever signs that people make up, if I get to the red light, that means something bad is going to happen. We're not allowed to make signs, and the Rambam says that if you make signs, it's called divination. It's like you're trying to predict the future, and people receive malchus. They receive lashes we say it like that, lashes? Yeah. They receive lashes for it. It's like a serious thing. It's considered like trying to take energy from the Avodah Zarah, that you're trying to get divine information through different avenues that are not kosher. So here, Jonathan is giving a sign. So we say, how is it possible that Jonathan is making a sign like that with Hashem? And even more so, we'll see that Jonathan will actually be successful. So how can he make a sign which is against the Torah, and then Hashem will help him? So he said, no, it's not the way it works. I mean, I'm saying it in very short. It's like pages and pages of commentaries, of like debates of like, how is it okay? How is it not okay? Da, da, da. But in very short, if your sign has a meaning, if it makes sense, then it's okay. If there is no connection between the sign that you make and the reality, then it's not okay. For example, if you say, well, I saw a red cat, that means I'm not going to win the lottery, makes zero sense. But if you say, well, I tripped, so I shouldn't do construction today, maybe it makes sense because you're tripping and you're being clumsy today, don't do construction today, you know? So things like that. We have another person in the Torah that made a sign with Hashem that said, Hashem, if this happens, then I will know this is the right solution. And if that happened, I will know that this is the right solution, I will know that it's not the right person. I'll be more specific. There is someone that said, Hashem, I have a mission to fulfill.
Eliezer with the water.
Yes. And he said, I need to find a wife for Rivka. How am I going to find a wife? Everybody knows shidduchim are really hard. How am I going to find a wife for Rivka? I don't know anybody in that city. If she says, if I meet a girl that tells me I will give you water and to your camels, then that will be the right girl. Excuse me. Maybe she's a witch at home and she's just nice to strangers. So like, what else do you need to know about her? So actually we say, no, it makes sense because giving water to camels is a very difficult task. If you would do that for a stranger, it shows an unusual kindness. And kindness is the most important value. So it makes sense, like it's connected to what you're looking for. You're looking for a good wife, look for kindness. So it's related. So because it's related, then it's okay. And here, Jonathan's sign is also related. He's saying like this. There are two ways of understanding what he's saying. Number one, he's saying, if they say, if I see, three ways. If I see that the pelishtim are scared to leave their encampments. So they say, we're not leaving our comfort zone. We're not leaving our safety zone. We're staying here. You come to us. And once you arrive in foreign territory, then we can see what we're going to do with you. That means that you're already in a position of inferiority because you're scared of us and we are here ready to fight. So already here we see that the sign is connected. He's saying, if they say, we're not leaving our space, then that shows that they're scared. So we know that we have an advantage. If they, on the other hand, if they say, no, you don't approach us, we're coming to you, that means that they're ready for business and they're ready to fight. So then we are at a disadvantage. So that could be one interpretation. The second interpretation is like, it could be they're lazy. Look, the soldiers, they're being on guard for 7 days and they're waiting for the war to start. They have enough already. So they're staying there at their watch post and like, yeah, come, let's see who you are. So like, they're half asleep. That's not soldiers. So if they're half asleep and they're not serious about doing war, then okay, half the battle is won already because we are coming prepared. We're coming with intention.
The people.
But they're coming with the passion. Third one. Look at what he says. He says, Domu adagienu elechem, pasuk tet, Domu adagienu elechem, stand until we arrive to you. Ve'amadnu tachtenu, and we will stand under. What is we will stand under? We are on a lower level than you. That means, what? I used to bring them from Canada.
My husband orders them from
Ve'amadnu tachtenu, and we stand under, we're below. So it means Jonathan knows already, he's saying, if in their words, they're telling us, you stay in the bottom, we are coming, that means that they keep their physical geographical superiority, and that means that symbolically, they're also superior. On the other hand, if they say, Alu aleinu, go up to us, that means come and surmount us and come overcome us. So they are giving him the power in their words. Ve'alinu, and then he says, and we'll go up. We'll go up as in we'll overcome it. We'll win them. In the movements, there is already the victory. So that's how it connects, and that's why Jonathan was allowed to give to make that sign. I remember when I was in 9th grade, we had an Israeli teacher who gave us that class, and she was waiting for a girl in the class. You know, when you give a class and you're waiting for the question to come up so that you can answer it? She was waiting for someone to say, oh, why is he giving a sign? And no one said anything because we had no idea of that halacha. So like, girls, it doesn't bother you? We're like, no. And then she went on.
Funny question, was reading through, why does it change the pasuk above? It adds the letter Hey in his name.
Excellent question. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. If you notice, wow, that is paying close attention. If you notice, Jonathan's name before the story of going and with the intention of attacking the pelishtim, exactly. His name is spelled Jonathan. After he starts going to attack the pelishtim, his name is changed to Yehonatan with the Hey of Hashem, because he had so much trust in Hashem. Hashem said, I'm gonna give you my name in you. Yeah, thank you for noticing. Before we go on, Jonathan is working with his weapon carrier. If I would need to give another name for weapon carrier, what word could I give for weapon carrier? Let's think more generally, not specifically.
Right-hand man.
Right-hand man, or what else?
Assistant.
An assistant. What else? Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Let's think in that way. An assistant,
Servant.
a servant. Thank you. We have Jonathan and a servant, because the weapon carrier is here to serve Jonathan, and even tells him, whatever you do, I'll do. Do you remember someone walking with a servant before in the Navi? That is a question for assiduous learners. So when we first meet Shaul is on the hunt for his donkeys. And who is he looking for the donkeys with? With his servant. And Shaul and Jonathan and his servant, they walk together, and they look from place to place. They look for 3 days. They look for the donkeys. And we see a few similarities between how Jonathan treats his servant and how Shaul treated his servant. And when we met Shaul and his servant the first time, we said how Shaul is so inclusive and so respectful of his servant. And how did we bring that out? It was by saying that Shaul tells his servant, let's go home. My father is going to be worried about us. As if his father would be worried equally about him than the servant. When we know that servants didn't have much importance back then. But he included his servant into the worry. And here, Jonathan includes his servant in the decision-making. His weapon carrier is mamash an assistant. The weapon carrier is not a trained soldier. It's not a skilled soldier. If he was a skilled soldier, he wouldn't be a weapon carrier. So he includes himself. Let's go and we'll pass by the pelishtim and let's attack them because Hashem can still help us. And he includes him in the narrative. And he shows that same trait of respect that his father had. On the other hand, in the story of Shaul, who is making the decisions? Who is making the choices? It was the servant. The servant was telling Shaul, yeah, it was Shaul said, let's go home. We didn't find the donkeys, let's go home. And the servant says, no, you don't know. There's Shmuel living right here. Let's go ask him. There's a Navi, he's going to tell us where it is. And Shmuel said, I don't have any money. I don't know if I can't give him anything. He said, no, don't worry. I have a coin. I'll give it to you. You know? So in the respect, Jonathan takes after his father. But on the leadership, Jonathan takes complete leadership. So that's also an interesting difference. So what will happen? Pasuk Yud Alef, Vayigalu shnehem. They revealed themselves, both of them. El matzav pelishtim, to the encampment of the pelishtim. Vayomru pelishtim, and the pelishtim says, Ine, here the Hebrews. Yotzim min hachorim, they go out of the holes asher itchabu sham, where they were hiding before. We saw at the beginning of Perek Yud Gimel that when the war broke out, the Bnei Israel went to hide in pits, in holes, in caves, because they were so scared of the pelishtim. The tone here of the pelishtim is very degrading towards Bnei Israel. How do we know? It's from the fact that they use the word ivrim, the Hebrews. The Hebrews is a very derogatory term to speak about the Jews. And we saw it, the first time we see it used in a derogatory way. It's when there is the Sarah Mashkin, the wine pour, how's it called? The wine pour? There is another word, but the butler of Paro that wants to mention Yosef to Paro to explain the dream. And he says, there's a Hebrew lad in the jail that is able to explain the dreams. And Rashi comes and say, why did he say Hebrew? Say, yeah, he's a Hebrew, he doesn't even speak our language. He said it in a mean way. He said, look at the Rishaim, that even when they need a favor, they'll still speak in a bad way. So here, the pelishtim, they don't need a favor, but they speak in a bad way of the Bnei Israel. Vayanu anshe hamatzava, and the people of the battalion entered to Yonatan, and to his weapon carrier. Vayomru, and they said, so now we're in suspense. What are they going to say? Are they going to say, we'll go to you, or are you coming to us? Vayomru, and they say, Alu elenu, go up to us, and we'll let you know the thing, meaning what we're going to do with you. So clearly, what's going to happen? Hashem is going to make them win. And Yonatan says to his weapon carrier, come after me. Hashem gave them in the hands of Am Yisrael. So it's like the sign came true. They was like, maybe they would have thought of a third option to say, and they would have been stuck as like, oh, we didn't think of that one. What do we do? Yonatan goes up on his hand and his feet. So imagine him climbing the cliff. And his weapon carrier right after him. It would be like a great scene for a movie, you know, like they go up and they arrive at the top and they see their face going up they arrive at the edge of the cliff. They see their face go up and right away they arrive and bam, they smash everybody. So and his weapon carrier right after him. ויפלו לפני יונתן ונושא כליו ממוטט אחריו. ויפלו לפני יונתן, and they fell in front of Yonatan. ונושא כליו ממוטט אחריו, and the weapon carrier, ממוטט is from the word misa, from the word die. He kills them after him. So what happens? Yonatan arrives, he doesn't say hello. He arrives, takes out his sword, right away starts smashing people and wounding them, and the weapon carrier comes and finishes them off one after the other. ותהי המכה הראשונה אשר היכה יונתן ונושא כליו. It was the first blow that Yonatan and his weapon carrier hit. כ-20 איש, about 20 men. כבחצי מענת צמד שדה, about half a herd of a cattle. What does that mean? In the space that half a herd of goats would take to graze, so in a relatively small space, there were about 20 soldiers and they killed them all. What does it say about 20 soldiers? Can you not give me a proper number? It's because it's to show how in the excitement, you don't pay attention to the details. You just go, 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 go. It was about 20 people. And then what happens? If you think about it, 20 people, for two people to kill 20 people is a lot, but is it like a humongous number? Like, chill out, it's a war, you know? Like people are gonna die. So it's not a massive number. It's not like, okay, it is a smashing success, but it's not like a miraculously, what? It's not all of them. Like if you tell me Shimshon, he comes, he kills 20,000 pelishtim like with his hand, okay. But here, like they're two, they killed 20, okay, like they got help, but like it's not humongous. But the consequence of it is going to be massive. What will happen is that people didn't expect Yonatan and his weapon carrier to come. People expected the Bnei Israel were hiding in caves. The pelishtim knew that they were hiding because they said, oh, look, the Bnei Israel came out of the hiding. But they didn't have time to warn anybody. So the pelishtim didn't expect the Jews to come whatsoever. And all of a sudden, the other soldiers, they see that there's a lot of movement and people dying and falling. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And there is that like panic reaction that all the pelishtim get into a massive panic. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And they get all super scared to the point that they get confused and they start fighting with each other. And it creates a huge tumult. And Bnei Israel are going to see that from far. Shaul is going to see that from far with his soldiers. They don't even know what's going on. They have to guess what's going on. So the consequence of Yonatan's action is far greater than the actual action. But it was all due to what? To his trust in Hashem.
Mhm.
That gave him like tremendous power. There was a trembling fear in the camp. Basadeh, in the field, and in the entire nation. We're talking here about the pelishtim nation. Hamatzav, the people who were standing, ve'amashchit, and the destroyers, chardu, they feared like it's a very trembling fear. Gam hema, vatirgaza, them too, vatirgaza aretz, and the earth trembled. Vatei lecherdat Elokim, and there was a fear of God. Do you remember at the beginning of the year we mentioned that the earth trembled? So at the beginning of the year, when there was the first war against the pelishtim with the Aaron and stuff, so there was also a moment that the earth trembled, but it was very different. And what is interesting is that we can just like move on and say, oh, so okay, so the earth trembled, it's like part of all the drama. But when you have stories that express a similarity, the Navi doesn't give all the details of what happened. If the Navi chooses certain words and certain descriptions to bring them up and to record them, it's like the Navi wants to give us a message, and we have to pay attention to those clues. At the beginning of Sefer Shmuel, in Perek Daled, we have the story of the Pelishtim going to war against Bnei Israel, and then Bnei Israel lose. And they say, you know what we have to do? We have to bring the Aaron is going to help us. And when the Aaron comes out, Bnei Israel are super happy. They're very excited because they say, oh, the Aaron came, and we're going to be saved. I love it that we're so far in that we can make comparisons with stories that we even forgot, you know? So they were so happy, Bnei Israel were so happy, they started dancing. The Aaron came and they're going to be saved, and that's going to be the solution. And the Pelishtim, they heard the earth tremble by Bnei Israel. And they understood that the Aaron came, and they got scared. But they reinforced themselves, and they strengthened themselves, and they went to war, and they won. And here, we have the opposite. Now, the earth is trembling by the Pelishtim, and it is out of fear, not out of joy. So we have a turn of situation. Pasuk Tetzayin. We are done now with what happens with the Pelishtim. Let's see what happens. The camera is moving. What happens by the Bnei Israel? Vayeru atzofim, the watch people, post-watch, as it called? Observers. Yeah, so the what?
Lookout.
So the lookout. So it's the people who are standing high up in the camp. They put up people high up to see what goes from far. What? The lookout? Huh?
Watch guards.
Watch guards, the watch guards from the lookout. Vayeru atzofim, and the watch guards from the lookout, leShaul of Shaul begivat Binyamin, in Givat Binyamin, ve'ineh hamon namog, vayelech halom, and they see that there is a tumult and it's going chaotic. But they don't understand why. They don't understand what's going on by the Pelishtim because their garrisons is here and they didn't make a move yet. Remember last time we saw Shaul, he was sitting. Vayomar Shaul la'am asher ito. Shaul says to the people who is with him, Pigduna ureu mi alach meimanu. Make a count of the army and see who has left. Vayifkedu, and they counted. Veine en Yonatan venoseh kelav. Everybody's here besides for Yonatan and his weapon carrier. Vayomer Shaul le'Achia. And now Shaul turns to Achia. Achia, remember, is the Kohen who is with Shaul. Hagish ha'aron Elokim. Bring the Aaron close to me. Ki haya Aaron Elokim bayom ha'u. Because they had the Aaron in those days. U'bnei Israel, he was with Bnei Israel. So why is he asking him to bring the Aaron Elokim? Is to have the Aaron in close proximity to the Kohen, so that when Shaul wants to ask the Kohen to ask the Urim Vetumim, and the message of Hashem would be, it's as if it would be easier to come because there would be the Kedusha of the Aaron with him. Vayehi ad diber Shaul el Kohen, and it was until Shaul was about to speak to the Kohen, ve'hamon asher b'machane Pelishtim, and the tumult in the camp of the Pelishtim, vayelech harov aloch varav, it increased and came more and more. Vayomer Shaul el Kohen, and Shaul said to the Kohen, Esof yedecha, take back your hand. Meaning, you don't need to ask the Urim Vetumim anymore. I wanted to receive instructions from you to know what does Hashem expect me to do. But now that I see all that tumult by the Pelishtim, I don't need to know what Hashem wants. And the Chachamim will hold Shaul very accountable for that. So what do you mean you don't need to know what Hashem wants and you understood by yourself? How do you know that you understand by yourself what Hashem wants? You have a Kohen, you have the Choshen Mishpat. Why don't you ask? Why don't you act with Hashem's instructions? Because if you act with Hashem's instructions, it gives you so much more power. You become the messenger of Hashem in your action, as opposed to just reacting to the situation that you see. So we see here something very interesting is that Shaul has access to the Choshen Mishpat, but he doesn't ask. Yonatan doesn't have access to the Choshen Mishpat, but he still makes a treaty with Hashem. Says, Hashem, if this happens, that means you're with me. If that happens, you're not with me. So that difference of trust. And here we see it's the second time that Shaul acts as a strategic reaction. The first time was when he brought the Korban before Shmuel came. And the reason when Shmuel comes, tells him, what did you do? He says, well, my soldiers were leaving me and the pelishtim were about to attack. So I had to bring the Korban. It's very funny because he says, I contained myself and brought the Korban, meaning I did it against my will. I knew I was not supposed to do it. Against my will, I didn't listen to you. I wanted to listen to you, but I was forced to bring the Korban. Because strategically, right?
I hear this every day. Thank God.
It will be Shaul that like before I made a comparison between Shaul and David, it will be one of Shaul's downfall compared to David. David will sin in greater sins than Shaul, but David's strong point is to admit his mistakes.
Why was Shaul chosen and not his son to be king?
His son would have been the next king.
You're saying that generation?
Yonatan was supposed to be the king after Shaul, because usually a king is a dynasty. So the son is supposed to be the king after his father. So Yonatan had all the traits of leadership. It's very, very interesting. He had like all the positive points. It's possible that he was too young. And on the other hand, when Shaul was chosen, he was the reflection of perfection. He was the image of perfection. And in a way, it's because he was so perfect that he sinned. Because for him, why did he bring the Korban before Shmuel came? Because he said, imagine I would start the war before I brought a Korban. So imagine you say, I can't go on a trip before davening first. If I go on a plane, I have to daven first. So I'll daven before Alas HaShachar, before Netz, during the night when you're not allowed to daven, Shachres, because I have my flight and I need to daven before I fly. So in a way, like you're davening. So like, did you do something wrong? You're davening to Hashem. Take the time to do Shachres. Is everybody saying Shachres every day? No. You make the effort you make sure, it's not you make the effort, you make sure to have that connection with Hashem. Because you can't go on a plane without davening. Okay. But like, does it mean that you need to daven before the time and put on filling before the time? So that was Shaul's reasoning. I know I'm doing it wrong, but I'm doing it because I must have that Kedusha feeling when if I go to war, I need to have the Kedusha with me first. Right. So he was in a very spiritual outlook. It's not like he was saying, I'll do things on my own because I know better. Because for him, he was completely surrounded with spirituality.
So he's doing the wrong thing with the right intention.
He was, yes, that is exactly the description of Shaul. Doing the wrong thing with the right intention. We'll see afterwards when he will fail, and the reason why he will lose his kingship a second time, in a way we'll explain, is because he didn't kill the animals, because he said, I'm going to bring, instead of just killing the animals of Amalek, I'm going to bring them as a korban. And Shmuel tells him, no one asked you to bring them as a korban, just do what I asked you to do. But is it bad to save animals, good animals, innocent animals for korban? Is it a bad thing in itself? Is it bad? It's not bad. So that's why, like, Shaul he's like that perfect, like so naive in his spirituality in a way, because for him, a relationship with Hashem is just perfect and it's just uniform. There's no nuances. So for him, like, more korbanos, the better. So why not? And he didn't realize that he didn't give enough importance to his position of leadership and how he's supposed to guide the people into following the directives of Hashem. That was his downfall. So it's not like, I'll not say it's not that it was a wrong choice. It's not that Shaul was a bad person and they chose him. They made a mistake in choosing him. He was a perfect person. That then he had, in the reality of things, he had his downfalls. So here it tells the Kohen, no, it's okay. You don't need to ask. You don't need to ask Hashem. And he will, Vayizaek Shaul, and Shaul screamed, as in he gathered, V'chol ha'am asher ito, he gathered the people, he resembled the people that were with him, Vayavo el mil'ad ha'milchama, and they came until the war, Ve'ine hayta cherev ish bereu, and there was the sword of a man in the other, Me'uma gedola me'od, a great chaos. Meaning the pelishtim were the ones with the swords, and they were just using the swords against each other. They were killing each other. In Hebrew, they say, "Kochotenu neged kochotenu." It's our forces against our forces. It's like the greatest tragedy is when the army is their own army is their own enemy. Pasuk Chafalef, Ve'ivrim hayu lapelishtim ke'etmol shilshom asher alu imam. That's very interesting. I'm going to explain. The Hebrews were with the pelishtim from before, asher alu imam, that went with them, b'machane, in the camp, b'machane saviv, in the camp and around, v'gam hema, and them too, liot im Israel. It sounds completely senseless. They came to be with Israel, asher im Shaul ve'Yonatan, who were with Shaul and Yonatan. And here we see that Yonatan is with that hey. But usually we'll see it with the him. So what happens is that they were part of the Jewish people that the pelishtim forced to live among them. Either there were people who were living on the board by the border cities, or people that the pelishtim suspected to be extra rebellious or extra strong that could rebel against them, and they forced them to live among the pelishti cities. And they told them, you have to live among us so that we keep a closer eye on you. And if we ever go to war against another nation, you are part of our army. And there were Jewish soldiers in the Pelishti army. So that's very strange, but it happened. If I can give you a modern analogy, is the countries that colonized, for example, England, France, they had their foreign legion in their army. So, for example, the country of Algeria, it was a colonized country by France during World War II. They had a foreign legion during World War II. It was soldiers of the colonized nations that fought at their side against the enemy. So, my grandfather was in Algeria, and during World War II, he served in the French army against the Germans in Italy. But like as an Algerian, he was in the Foreign Legion. So it's a common practice. So here, that's what they did. They said, we are the Pelishtim, you're the Bnei Israel, we colonized your nation, we invaded you, so we have power over what you do. So we tell you, those people, you have to be part of our army.
It sounds like in Israel, they have Arabs in the Israeli army, no?
You're being very political. No, I'm joking. But they don't have, it's by choice. They don't draft people and force the Arabs to be in their army. That would be very counter-strategic for them to do that.
But they're like Israeli Arabs, no?
Yeah. So, but it's by choice. They want to join the
No, I
army.
never realized that.
I'm pretty sure they wouldn't force an Israeli Arab to be in. I mean, you understand the danger if they would force an Israeli Arab to be the Israeli Arab. So they don't force them, but they have the right. The Druze, they really want to enroll in the army. The Israeli Arabs, I don't know actually if they're allowed. Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Okay, ongoing screening throughout their time, yeah.
For the Druze, no. For the Druze, they're very trustworthy. For the Israeli Arabs, I don't know if they're allowed to serve in the army, actually, in the IDF. I don't know. I'm not saying they're not. I'm saying I don't.
Right.
I mean, they're allowed to be in the Knesset for sure.
I know that they don't let American soldiers who are Jewish American soldiers serve in Israel, like to in the embassy, because they'll have a conflict of interest.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Because
that's
they're like,
interesting.
if the Israelis climb over the embassy wall, are you gonna shoot them?
Interesting.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So those Jewish people that were living among the pelishtim and that usually would fight the wars together with the pelishtim, those Jews, they left the Pelishti side and they joined the Israeli forces to fight against the pelishtim. You understand? So that's what we're referring to in this pasuk. Pasuk Chabet, Bechol ish Yisrael hamitchabim, and all the men of Israel that were hiding. Behar Ephraim, in Har Ephraim, that we mentioned at the beginning of Perek Yud Gimel, all the people that were hiding. Shamu, they heard Kinasu Pelishtim, that the Pelishtim fled. Vayedbeku, Gam hema acharehem b'milchama, and they also tallied them in the war. So everybody joined the party. And now look at this pasuk. So when we read the psukim, we're like, oh, okay, great, so great ending, like nice classic Tanakh story of a war that started dangerous and ended up in our favor. The next pasuk is going to show us that it was not just another battle. It was a gigantic miracle. So look at the next pasuk and tell me, it's going to be very obvious, the connection with another event. Vayosha Hashem bayom hahu, and Hashem delivered on that day et Israel. Vayosha Hashem bayom hahu et Israel, and Hashem saved Israel on that day. Where else do we have words like this?
In davening.
In davening. Or what part of davening?
Right before Az Yashir.
Right before Az Yashir. And what is, if you would continue the pasuk that you know, Vayosha Hashem et Israel bayom hahu.
Es Yisrael.
Miyad Mitzrayim. Miyad Mitzrayim, from the hand of Mitzrayim. So when Hashem saved Bnei Israel from Mitzrayim, we all know it's one of like the main miracles of history, right? And here, it's the only time. Just don't get confused that, oh, every time there is a victory of Bnei Israel, we say that pasuk. It's the only other time that we have a pasuk like this. Vayosha Hashem bayom hahu et Israel. It's like a statement in saying this is a significant victory, not just a victory. והמלחמה עברה את בית אבן, and the war passed בית אבן, the place of בית אבן. So it was like a landmark. So here we have an enormous victory of Israel. ואיש ישראל ניגש ביום ההוא, and Bnei Israel came close that day. ויואל שאול את העם. So Bnei Israel rested a little bit. They relaxed on that day, meaning they didn't pursue the fight until the war would be completely finished. They say, okay, look, we won the war, like Vayosha Hashem bayom hahu, Hashem saved us. So people started relaxing in the war and in the battle, and they didn't continue pursuing the pelishtim as much as they could have. Vayoel Shaul, and Shaul forbade, or Shaul made a promise, et ha'am, to the people. Lemor, and he said, Arur ha'ish asher yochal lechem. Cursed is the man who will eat bread ad ha'erev until the evening. V'nikamti me'oivai, and I will take revenge over my enemies. So Shaul is taking another step now. He's saying, I know that we are winning the war, for sure. We won the war, but we didn't really finish off the pelishtim. And everybody now is like taking it for granted. Okay, like we won. It's in our pocket already. It's granted that we won. But Shaul wants them to continue chasing the pelishtim until where they took refuge. Not just say, okay, you fled, you ran away from the battlefield, so you lost. Like, no, I want to really finish off their army. So he says, you know what? As long as we didn't finish that war, no one is allowed to eat. And whoever eats, Arur, he's cursed. That's a strong statement. Basically, what he's saying is that he's making a vow on behalf of the people that no one is going to eat on that day until the end of the day. It was customary for Jewish soldiers to fast on the day of war. That's why we fast the day before Purim. The day before Purim, the reason why we fast is because Bnei Israel went to fight against the enemies that wanted to kill them. And on that day, because it was a day of fighting.
Not drinking?
What?
They would not drink also when they were fighting? Like I just have an idea of like fasting to prepare spiritually. but,
Right,
like,
so that was the idea.
if they're physically fighting, then like would they be allowed to drink? Like,
So,
would they have energy?
It's a fine debate. I don't know practically if they were allowed to drink, if they were allowed to drink. The idea is, why would they fast if they're going to war? They should be allowed to eat. They need their strength. But the idea is that you're not thinking strategically. You're thinking only spiritually. Strategically, you should give food to your soldiers so that they have energy to fight and they can think clearly. But because we look at it that in a time of a fight, in a time of a war, it's a time of deen, it's a time of judgment, that Hashem is judging us. So we want to be as close to Hashem spiritually as possible. So the same way on Yom Kippur, we fast because we want to be close to Hashem, we want to look like angels. So the same way when we go at war, we show Hashem, we're relying only on you, and we're going to fast. Now what happens is that usually when we fast is when there is the midah of judgment that is upon us, and we want to show Hashem that He should show us mercy because we are being so spiritual. But here, that day was not a day of judgment; it was a day of rachamim. It was a day of mercy. Hashem was saving them. So the notion of judgment was passed already. So Shaul didn't have to make that statement and to say no one is allowed to eat until we finish the war. But he did to bring up a point. The fact, we'll see the next part of the pasuk, Velo ta'am kol ha'am lechem, and the entire nation didn't even taste bread. The people followed through with it. And because they followed through, I know you need to go. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for coming. Because the people followed through. No, it's not. Because people followed through with the request of Shaul, it took validity. If people would have said, Your Majesty, there's no need for us to fight, maybe it could have been put back into question. But the fact that people followed through with it, people agreed with it, it gave it validity. That the person that would break that vow would be punished. We'll see severely punished, because it's a commandment of the king, and you're not allowed to go against the commandment of the king. Also, in the word arur, in the fact that he says cursed will be the man, there is the notion of I'm making you do an oath that you will not do it because no one wants to be cursed. And if you break an oath, it's very serious to break an oath in Judaism. So if you break an oath, you passible of death. All right. Now, at this point, Shaul made that rule, but if you pay close attention, Shaul and Jonathan still didn't reunite. So Jonathan actually has no idea that oath was being made.
It switched back to the other one I'm noticing.
What?
The other spell.
To the other
Without
spelling
the
of
hate.
Jonathan? Yeah, it's funny. I thought it was like forever, but I guess it was just that time. And then afterwards, it's going to come on and off.
Interesting.
Yeah. V'chol haaretz ba'u bayar, and the whole land, meaning the whole nation, they came to a forest. In their chase after the pelishtim, they came to a forest. Vayehi devash al pnei hasadeh, and they found honey on the field, on the ground. What is the honey? Honey represents sweetness. It represents the good, the mercy of Hashem, the good side of Hashem, the kindness of Hashem. So we see in a physical way how Hashem is showing them that He has sweet intentions towards them. Vayavo ha'am el hayar, and the people came to the forest. Ve'ine helech dvash, and there is flowing honey. Ve'en masig yado el piv, and no one even touched it. No one puts his hand to his mouth. Ki yarei ha'am et hashvua, because the people were scared of the oath. They respected the oath that they made with Shaul. They will not eat. Now let's look at the previous pasuk. What did Shaul make them swear? Arur ha'ish asher yochal lechem. Curses the man who will eat bread. Do they have bread here? No, there's honey. So what's the connection? So we explained that the bread in general is a general term for food. It's a global term for any food. So Shaul was telling them you can't eat any type of food. So people were very, very careful, and no one ate from the honey. V'Yonatan lo shama be'ashbiya aviv et ha'am. Jonathan didn't hear that his father made the people swear. וישלח את קצה המטה אשר בידו, and he took the end of the stick that he had in his hand, ויטבול אותה, and he dipped it, ביערת הדבש, in the flowing honey, וישב ידו אל פיו, you have like in slow motion, takes this, dips it, and he brings his hand to his mouth, ותאורנה עיניו, and his eyes lit up. If you want a modern illustration of saying his eyes lit up, think of people addicted to coffee, and they say, before I have my coffee, I can't think straight. And as soon as you drink your coffee, all of a sudden you reach clarity. So Jonathan was exhausted, he was starving, and he had some honey, and it gave him like a boost of energy, like, finally. Vayan ish me'am, and a person from the nation told him, Vayomer, and he said, your father made us promise. Et ha'am, the whole nation, limor, and he said, Harura ish asher yochal lechem hayom. Curses the person who's going to eat bread today. And the people were tired. He's telling him, don't think that we have extra strength, thank you. We have extra koyach because we promised your father that we'll not eat. We're all super tired. We're all exhausted. We're all fasting. We wish we could eat of the honey, but we're not, because we respect your father's promise. And you come and eat freely honey. Why? Because you're the son of the king. So you have all the rights. It's a sensitive topic, right? Leadership that is not following the rules. My father did something wrong. Re'una, look, my eyes lit up. Because I tasted a little bit of the honey. And even if the people would eat today from the loot of the enemy, that they found, because now the blow against the pelishtim was not great. Sorry, I didn't translate it right. Despite that, the people didn't eat anything that they found. Despite Afki, even with what Jonathan said, he said, my father is wrong, he shouldn't have made that oath. He said, despite that statement that Jonathan made, people didn't eat from what they got from the pelishtim, because they didn't finish killing them. And they hit, the Bnei Israel hit the pelishtim from Michmash to Ayalon, and the people were very tired. I think we're also a little bit tired. It's 9:38. I think we're going to stop here because there is a few more steps until the end of the Perek. So like we have like 3 more psukim. So we're going to stop here. We have Jonathan that broke his father's promise, his father's oath, and the people are still fighting, and they're getting very tired. So what's going to happen next? Do we let the suspense?